SpongeBob Squarepants, the greatest animated show of all time, and I truly believe that because when I was a kid, I didn't miss a single episode of SpongeBob. I was proud of that. And now today, when I went back and did the research for this episode, I was completely and utterly entertained and laughing throughout, even though I'm 19 years old. How does that happen? It's because this show is so unique, both kids and adults can watch it together. The kids can enjoy the nuatical nonsense SpongeBob's goofiness provides, and the adults can enjoy the meaning behind each episode through the eyes of Squidward. And I have a theory about people that didn't grow up watching SpongeBob. I think they ended up being, bisexual furry They probably grew up, watching We Bare Bears, new episodes of SpongeBob where he's sucking off Patrick. I mean, they're just not getting instilled the same values like friendship, imagination, and maybe even not procrastinating. But you know what? Since Steven Hillenburg left, there hasn't been much below the surface when it comes to characters and the meanings behind the episodes. But today, let's go ahead and look back on the good days and go through the most meaningful and impactful episodes of SpongeBob and rank the top 5. Let's get started. At number 5, we have Dumped. While this episode really wasn't action-packed, it was most certainly emotionally packed. I believe this is where my distrust for women and cats began. This is when I realized women only love you because of your money. That's obvious, right? Everybody knows that. And cats only love you because you give them a couple nibble treats. At the start of this episode, Gary seems to take a liking to Patrick's crotch area, but SpongeBob doesn't seem to mind. He thinks Gary's just being friendly with Patrick. SpongeBob lets Gary sleep over at Patrick's rock, and I think Gary ends up sucking Patrick's cock. But it gets worse. When SpongeBob goes back to pick up Gary, Gary is still attached to Patrick's crotch area. Now SpongeBob is upset and gives Gary the chance to choose between him and Patrick. And Gary, that slutty, slimy snail, picks Patrick. Even after everything SpongeBob has done for Gary, Gary stabs him in the back. SpongeBob tries desperately to get back at Patrick and Gary by replacing Gary with a bunch of different pets. But it's not the same. One day when Patrick comes over to do his laundry and takes off his pants, exactly like when he does when Gary sucks him off. But anyway, Gary detaches from Patrick and goes inside Patrick's pocket and pulls out a cookie, and then goes back to SpongeBob. The message of the story is, never trust a slutty, slimy slut. At number 4, we have Muscle Bob Buff Pants. This episode is about the shallowness of instant gratification, and it directly contradicts one of my least favorite quotes. Fake it till you make it. Whoever came up with that quote needs the retard award. The episode starts off with a classic scene where SpongeBob struggles to lift a stuffed animal barbell. Obviously, SpongeBob isn't the most muscular guy, but he has a dream, just like Martin Luther King, okay? It has nothing to do with racial equality, and it has everything to do with being fucking swole, man. But when Sandy starts to train him, he gives up pretty quickly after seeing how much work it takes to get the body he wants. Instead of working out, he just has the bright idea to order a pair of blow-up buff arms he saw on TV. At first, Larry the Lobster and the other underwater beach-loving meatheads are impressed by his artificial guns, but when Sandy signs SpongeBob up for an anchor tossing competition, SpongeBob embarrasses himself when his fake arms fail him. Just like how all attempts to be someone you're not never work out because you haven't put in the adequate work to deserve it. Now that SpongeBob has been thoroughly embarrassed and knows he can't fake it anymore, he accepts his fate and starts all the way back at the start of his journey. This showed me as a kid that you have to put in all the necessary work in order to claim the rewards that you visualize in your head, okay? You're not just going to be able to cheat. You're not going to be able to shortcut. Okay, you have to start from the bottom and work your way up. All these bisexual furries, you know what they're doing? They're not working. Unemployed, okay? At number 3, we have Squidville. This is an episode where Squidward takes the spotlight, which usually means that only adults are going to be able to comprehend the deeper meaning behind this episode, which, lucky for us, I think we're all adults here. And if you're 13, get the fuck out of here, man. This episode starts out like most SpongeBob episodes do, with SpongeBob and Patrick annoying Squidward. This time, it's with a reef blower. After SpongeBob and Patrick start to suck off parts of Squidward's home, Squidward confronts them by telling them that they are childish for playing with reef blowers and says there is no possible way playing with a reef blower could be fun. They continue to suck off every part of Squidward's home, turning it into nothing but a rock, just like Patrick's home, which kind of symbolizes that Squidward is basically the same as Patrick, except for his attachment to material things, which in the end just make him unhappy. But when they try to put Squidward's rock decorations back, they destroy his home home, showing us that material possessions are fragile. Squidward then explains to SpongeBob in an exasperated voice that this is the last straw.
I would rather tear out my brainstem, carry it into the middle of the nearest four-way intersection, and skip rope with it, than go on living where I do now.
Right when he says that, a television drops from the sky, and a man on the TV happens to be explaining the exact place where Squidward is looking to live.
Would you rather tear out your brainstem, walk out into the middle of the nearest four-way intersection, and skip rope with it?
Tentacle Anchors, where happiness is just a suck away. I mean a suction cup away. Squidward grabs his clarinet and heads over, and when he arrives, it's like he's in heaven. It's everything he could have possibly wished for. And then here's my favorite part of the episode, is when SpongeBob calls Squidward and he's talking in a gibberish language, and Squidward just instantly becomes a racist.
There is no way I am moving back there, SpongeBob. I am finally among my own kind.
But Squidward for the next few weeks participates in every single one of his favorite activities without interruption from childish SpongeBob. It's what he's always wanted, right? Squidward is in paradise. For a time, but after a while these activities he once loved become more boring and mundane, and Squidward becomes, well, depressed. Well, I guess more depressed. To cure this depression, Squidward picks up an unoccupied reef blower and starts wreaking havoc just like SpongeBob. He's really enjoying himself and seems to be having more fun messing around with these people than playing the clarinet with them. It's like he's a kid again. We've never seen Squidward like this. Squidward ends up upsetting the uptight residents of Squidville. They tell him he doesn't have to live here. Squidward is full of energy and life, and he takes this opportunity and uses the reef blower to blow himself back to his old home, and that's where the episode ends. I found many meanings in this episode. Number one, it resembles our human instinct to resist change. As humans, we want to stay in homeostasis. We kind of want to stay in the same place, in the same feelings. We want to experience the same things. In Squidville, Squidward is only experiencing pleasure.
Too much paradise.
I mean, he doesn't have SpongeBob and Patrick there to annoy him, to get him to the lows so he can experience the highs better.
SpongeBob?
You have to experience pain to experience more pleasure. If you're just experiencing pleasure, you're going to go into this, deep depression of being depressed. At the number 2 spot, we have Roller Cowards. Not only does this episode perfectly capture what it takes to ride a roller coaster for the first time, but it perfectly captures what it takes to pursue something you want, even though it's fucking scary. This episode starts off with Patrick showing SpongeBob a commercial of the new roller coaster opening tomorrow at Glove World, the Fiery Fist o' Pain. Patrick and SpongeBob quickly go to bed so they can get up early the next morning, but SpongeBob doesn't sleep well and has a terrible dream where the Fiery Fist o' Pain literally kills him and Patrick. Even after the bad night's sleep, SpongeBob and Patrick hop on the bus and try to cover up their anxiety with excitement. But from that point forward, their fear gets worse and worse from the things they see and hear.
I heard somebody rode it and his spine fell out.
SpongeBob and Patrick continue to put off facing their fears by riding the kiddie rides. But the part where they're about to ride the ride and they see a grandpa being wheeled out screaming in pain resembles the mind shifting our perceptions to make potential situations seem worse than they really are and try to protect us. The grandpa is in the wheelchair because he has a serious medical condition, not because of the ride. But SpongeBob's brain draws immediate conclusions that support his dreams of pain due to the fear. But the most meaningful part of this episode is when SpongeBob and Patrick go and get some ice cream to distract themselves from the fear. In this scene, it seems both SpongeBob and Patrick are talking to themselves, but I don't think they're talking to themselves. I think the self is the soul, awareness, the thing that can see your thoughts. And the thoughts inside your head aren't you. There's some object like ice cream cone that SpongeBob is talking to. The self is the thing that chooses to listen to that voice. The self is what made Patrick want to show SpongeBob the commercial. The self could have been the thing that made them get on the bus even though they didn't want to. The voice of fear, self-doubt, and sabotage that SpongeBob and Patrick are talking to in this scene is the only thing keeping them from getting on that ride, but only because they choose to do what it says. Real bravery is hearing that voice in your head and ignoring it and pushing through. This ice cream cone SpongeBob is talking to is the voice that's going on in most people's heads all day long. As you can see with SpongeBob, the voice that tells him he's hungry and that he needs to go get some ice cream is the same voice that's asking him why he's letting Patrick down. And it's even causing him physical pain for putting off going on the ride. On one hand, riding the Fist of Pain could be potentially painful. Your spine can fall out or something. On the other hand, you don't want to seem like a pussy to Patrick, so what are you gonna do? And until one pain becomes much stronger than the other, nothing happens. And when Patrick comes out after being alone with his thoughts to confess to SpongeBob that he's actually afraid to go on the ride, they announce there's 5 minutes left to ride the Fist of Pain, which I think forces the both of them into enough anxiety to actually go ride the ride. There's a really true moment right before getting on the Fist of Pain where SpongeBob and Patrick lock up with fear while reading the warning sign outside the ride, but then somehow just start walking. And despite all the voices in their head telling them not to board the Fist of Pain, they do. But as they're about to launch off, the ride breaks down and a part of them is filled with relief, and they confess to each other that they were scared to ride the Fist of Pain. But as they say that, the ride conductor fixes the ride and shoots them both up the roller coaster, ticking with terror. As they're going up the slope of the roller coaster, SpongeBob says, "I don't want to face my fears. I'm afraid of them," which I thought was pretty funny because, like, no shit, Sherlock. Then we are given this wonderful payoff of SpongeBob and Patrick actually riding the ride and being filled with euphoria and pride after getting off. After SpongeBob and Patrick conquered their fears, they received their spines back, which gave them the vitality to want to ride again. I mean, I refused to ride roller coasters until like last summer. But when I rode a roller coaster, I became like a roller coaster fanatic. I wanted to fucking ride them all. But it's the same for all the fears in our life, okay? They seem a lot worse than they really are inside our heads. And if you overcome that voice of fear and self-doubt and fucking sabotage that's telling you to fucking sit on your ass, then you're gonna feel a lot better about yourself and that voice is gonna become weaker. This episode shows us how terrible that voice in our head treats us and how it's actually possible to overcome that voice and face your fears. And it's even easier when you have a friend next to you. At number 1, we have the most relatable episode in TV history, procrastination. A title so simple but so deep. That one word, procrastination, has ruined more dreams than any other word. I mean, people just keep putting off stuff and acting like it doesn't matter until one day, the day of reckoning, when they have to look back and regret at all the things they haven't done. And then they fucking die. I mean, this one word is why so many people are miserable, broke, and, well, miserable. Even though I watched this episode when I was a kid, I still remember it like on the weekly basis because sometimes I catch myself doing the same things SpongeBob does in this episode. Everything SpongeBob does to get away from his work is completely true down to the minute details in this episode. The writers in this episode know all the tricks your mind plays on you in order to get you away from your work. When SpongeBob visualizes the future benefits this paper could potentially provide, it gives him motivation to write only the title of the paper. That's it. That makes me sad how true that is. I mean, our brains are not meant for writing. They're meant for fucking and sucking. They're meant for finding food and surviving. And visualizing the future outcome will only get you so far. At some point, you're gonna need some discipline. And SpongeBob doesn't have much discipline, as we can see in this episode. And we just get to watch him do all the things we do when we procrastinate. Look in the fridge, distract ourselves with the phone, basically do anything except write. We get to see how badly our subconscious mind treats us when we don't do our work. The fireball and the clock in SpongeBob's dream represent the resistance that Steven Pressfield describes in The War of Art. That's only goal is to keep us from doing our work and not letting you proceed to a higher plane of existence. And towards the end, you get to see how the creative process works when, after hours and hours of procrastination, SpongeBob finally commits fully to writing his paper and the ideas just magically fly into his head. Why couldn't this have just happened at the start? And unlike most SpongeBob episodes, this one is a lot different because it's not happily ever after. It ends in a brutally painful way. When SpongeBob finally finishes the paper, he's so proud of himself that he rushes to class to show Mrs. Puff what he did. Mrs. Puff tears SpongeBob apart literally when he tells him that she's canceled the essay assignment. All SpongeBob work and suffering were for nothing. As is with most creative work, most of it isn't appreciated. I mean, this really hits home for me because for the past 3 years, I've been painstakingly making creative work just to realize nobody fucking cares, man. But you know what? It's all about the process, and that's what this episode shows us. It shows us that it's way more miserable to put it off, to procrastinate, than to just get it Done. And maybe the results will come and maybe they won't. That's not up to you. All you can control is doing the work or not doing the work, and you're going to be way more miserable if you procrastinate. I can tell you that. Anyways, guys, that's my top 5 most meaningful SpongeBob episodes. Let me know what your favorite SpongeBob episode is, or the most meaningful episode to you. Maybe it's Band Geeks because you grew up, playing in the band and you're a fucking geek. But whatever it is, let me know in the comments below and drop a like if you like this video. Thanks, guys.